Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good day to Dr. Nur Muslim and all panels. I am Osman Nul Hakim bin Asmi, EN 0106480. So today I would like to present my proposal defense titled The Impact of Household Consumption on Carbon Dioxide Emission Per Capita in Malaysia. So let's begin with table of contents. This presentation will cover three chapters. Chapter 1, Introduction, which will include background study, problem statement, research questions, research objective, significance of study, and scope of study. Second chapter, literature review. And the last one, third chapter, data and methodology, which will include theoretical framework, statistical analysis, hypothesis, and expected outcomes. Now, I will start with the Chapter 1, Introduction. Background study. Global warming and climate change have gained spotlights in recent decades. The issues have been debated and discussed globally, where many agreements have been ratified as efforts to combat the issues. Malaysia in Paris Agreement in 2015 has promised to reduce 45% of greenhouse gases emission by 2030 relative to the emissions intensity of GDP in 2005. There are many factors that have been linked to carbon dioxide emission, climate change, and global warming, such as economic activity of production and manufacturing. Economic activities of production and manufacturing would never exist without the demand and consumption from consumers. Household consumption is one of the components of consumption C in GDP. Since independence, Malaysia household consumption has grown from year to year. The percentage of household consumption under GDP has also increased significantly from 46% in 1996 to 59.8% in 2019. Increase in household consumption is believed to be induced by the increase in household income, which later motivated higher consumption. The household consumption can be further divided into various categories, such as first, petroleum products, electricity, gases, fuels; second, foods and beverages; third, clothing and footwear; fourth, alcoholic beverages and tobacco, and many more. Thus, a study should be done to examine the impact of household consumption on carbon dioxide emission in Malaysia. Next, problem statement. Global warming and climate change have brought significant impacts towards Malaysia, its citizens, and the economy. The effects include drought, extreme monsoon, increase in sea level, biodiversity loss, and increase in flood accidents. These lead to reduced crop yields, loss of wealth and property, loss of life, and reduction in resources, and many more. The issues have always been linked to an increase in carbon emission, and many studies have found the relationship between economic activity and carbon emission. However, there is a limited exploration done in Malaysia to study the impact of consumer activities such as household consumption on carbon dioxide emission in Malaysia. Next, research questions. The study would cover two research questions, which is first, what is the relationship between various household consumption categories and the carbon dioxide emission per capita in Malaysia? And second, how does household consumption give impact towards carbon dioxide emission per capita in Malaysia? Next, research objective. The study would also have two research objectives, which is first, to examine the relationship between various household consumption groups and the carbon dioxide emission per capita in Malaysia, and second, to determine the impact of household consumptions towards carbon dioxide emission per capita in Malaysia. After that, significance of study. The significance of this study is first to acquire more information on the impact of household consumption on carbon dioxide emission per capita in Malaysia. Second is to deliver understanding of the importance of sustainable living towards Malaysia households. Third, the study can act as a reference to enact or propose new law and policies relating to consumption and sustainable living. The last one would be as a support evidence for other organizations such as NGOs when initiating campaigns related to the issues. Scope of study. The project will study the significance of different categories of household consumption in Malaysia. Carbon dioxide emission per capita will represent the amount of carbon emission per household in Malaysia. The study will cover the household consumption at the national level, and the research will study the impacts using data from 1993 to 2019. Now, I will move to Chapter 2, Literature Review. First, a study by Xu Chen-Chang in 2015 had found that energy consumption has a positive relationship with income in emerging markets and developing economies. As we know, energy consumption is a big part of the household consumption, and Malaysia is one of the emerging markets and developing economies. Second, Yu Wang in 2010 had studied the impact of energy consumption on the environment and public health in China. The research found that the main factors of the emission were economy, urbanization, population, and energy efficiency. After that, Jarwan Chuntanawat in 2020 had found that there is a long-run relationship between economic activities and energy consumption on carbon dioxide emission in ASEAN countries. Once again, Malaysia is a member of ASEAN countries. Next, study in Malaysia by Nurlaila Abdullah Cik in 2013 concluded that urban household contributes more to carbon dioxide emission compared to rural households. The study had utilized data from Malaysia Input-Output Table 2005. Now, let's look at the similar studies done in other countries. Zhen Huafeng in 2010 concluded that indirect energy consumption and carbon dioxide emission are significantly higher for high-income families compared to low-income families in China. Next, Shui Bin had found that 80% of the energy consumption and carbon dioxide emitted in the country were a consequence of consumer demands and economic activities related to them in the United States of America. After that, Manfred Lanzen had found in his research that no single country would fit into a single trajectory line of carbon dioxide emission against private expenditure. As many countries prove the relationship between household consumption and carbon dioxide emission, the research by Manfred Lanzen suggested that different countries have different outcomes and patterns of results. Thus, there is a need for such study to be carried out in Malaysia. Now, I would like to continue with Chapter 3, Data and Methodology. I will start with theoretical framework. This study would include 5 independent variables and 1 dependent variable. The independent variables is the categories of the household consumption, which include first, food and non-alcoholic beverages, second, alcoholic beverages and tobacco, third, clothing and footwear, fourth, housing, water, electricity, gas and other fuels, and the last one would be transportation. The dependent variable of the study would be carbon dioxide emission per capita in Malaysia. Next, I would like to continue with statistical analysis. This study would utilize 2 statistical analyses, which is first, Pearson product moment correlation, and second, linear regression. Pearson product moment correlation is used to measure the strength of a linear association between independent variables and the dependent variable. The formula is as shown in the slide, which is R equal to N times the sum of the X times Y minus the sum of X times the sum of Y divided by the square root of N times the sum of X squared minus the sum of X then squared times the N times the sum of Y squared minus the sum of Y then squared. In this study, the R is the correlation coefficient, the X would be the independent variables, which is the different categories of the household consumption mentioned just now, the Y, the dependent variables, which is the carbon dioxide emission per capita in Malaysia, and the N would be the number of pairs of data. After that, linear regression. Linear regression is used to evaluate how well the regression model fits the data. It will measure the impact of independent variables on the dependent variable. The formula of linear regression used in this study is as shown in the slide. E equal to beta 0 plus beta 1 times with ln f plus beta 2 times with ln A plus beta 3 times with ln C plus beta 4 times with ln H and plus beta 5 times with ln T plus E. The E represents the carbon dioxide emission per capita in Malaysia. The F in the equation is the consumption of food and non-alcoholic beverages. The C is the alcoholic beverages and tobacco consumption. H would be housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels consumption. T would be transportation. And E is the error. There are 5 hypotheses that can be deduced for each Pearson product moment correlation and linear regression. However, it can be simplified for the presentation into one single set of hypotheses for each statistical analysis. For Pearson product moment correlation, the rationale is there is no correlation between household consumption categories, which is the independent variables, and carbon dioxide emission per capita in Malaysia. The H alternative is there is a correlation between household consumption categories and carbon dioxide emission per capita in Malaysia. For linear regression, the H null is there is no significant impact between household consumption categories on carbon dioxide emission per capita in Malaysia, while the H alternative would be there is a significant impact between household consumption categories on carbon dioxide emission per capita in Malaysia. It is noted that the term of household consumption categories should be replaced with each of the independent variables stated before. Last, the expected outcome. It is expected that the household consumption for each category would have a positive relationship with carbon dioxide emission per capita in Malaysia. It is also expected that the household consumptions would give impact towards carbon dioxide emission per capita in Malaysia. That's all from me. Thank you.